One other topic besides Warcraft that I watch fairly frequently on YouTube is alternate history. I always found all the infinite possibilities of how things could have gone if you changed things just a little bit very fascinating. And not just the endless what if Germans won World War II, or what if the Confederacy won the American Civil War? I always prefer the far older scenarios from the Middle Ages or even Antiquity, because they have the greatest potential to change the world almost unrecognizably at the slightest change. What if Jesus became as forgotten as all the other apocalyptic preachers of his time? What if Muhammad hit his head on a rock while fleeing Mecca? What if Mark Antony and Cleopatra won their civil war and became rulers of Rome? These people, these events, shaped our world in unimaginable ways to a degree where it is hard to even imagine what today would look like if that happened. And sometimes I wonder, what if some seemingly small event changed in the history of Warcraft, and how would it change the world of Azeroth and how it looks like years later? WoW seemed to toy with the idea a little bit by giving us Caverns of Time instances where we had to protect history, frequently quite horrible events, because if we didn't, things would go wrong. How wrong? Apparently, every single one of these scenarios presented to us would spell instant doom, either by the Burning Legion winning, or even if we crossed their plans somehow, or by flat out saying the timeline would collapse. That is a boring answer. And we are here today to look at this realistically and start with one very promising scenario. We are here to ask and answer one simple question. What if Medivh never opened the Dark Portal? The first question we have to ask is how it happens. There are at least two distinct possibilities, both stemming originally from World of Warcraft. The first is, of course, the aforementioned opening of the Dark Portal instance in the Burning Crusade. In it, the Infinite Dragonflight intervenes and tries to kill Medivh while he is channeling his spell, and he, instead of stopping, killing them all instantly because he has the power of Sargeras, and then proceeding, he just stands there like a doofus waiting for us to defend him. Can this realistically happen? Can the Infinites kill Medivh here? Apparently, they can, and things would spiral out from there. What would the kingdoms of Azeroth do without the orcs being present there? The Burning Legion clearly would not give up on conquering Azeroth, but I can answer these same questions for the most part with my other scenario. What if Medivh can't open the Dark Portal because he never gets help from the other side, because someone took out Gul'dan? This is the scenario I have developed once already and used in a series of posts on my old blog from years ago, and it is still one of my favorite scenarios. It came as a response to Warlords of Draenor and wondering what happened on the Azeroth of that timeline. Blizzard clearly wasn't interested in exploring that and tried to quickly shut down that silly excuses like that Draenor being some kind of pocket dimension taken out of time without its own Azeroth or Burning Legion. The less we speak about that idea, the better. But what if it wasn't? What if it wasn't a pocket dimension? What if it was a full timeline of its own? And what if that Azeroth existed? And if it did, what happened there? Medivh never contacts Gul'dan, who is taken out early by either Grommash or whoever else convinces the Horde to not drink the blood of Manoroth, and he does not have an invasion force that can hit the Kingdom of Stormwind. At first, this seems like good news. Stormwind is never invaded, the human kingdom stays stronger. They should be more ready for the Legion's return in a couple of decades, right? Unfortunately for them, things are not that easy. The first thing we have to consider is Medivh himself. He is not going to just give up. He is possessed by Sargeras, a fragment of him at least, who wants to bring doom to Azeroth. If he doesn't have the outlet of using the orcs, he will look for other outlets. And if he doesn't help invade Stormwind, Anduin Lothar and Khadgar have no reason to kill him. Medivh has more time to scheme and plan their eventual destruction. Meanwhile, another element of that time is the tensions between the human kingdoms. We like to think of the Alliance nowadays as one big happy family because Blizzard insists on fomenting faction tribalism for decades. If all red is bad, then all blue must be good. We must stick together, and we can't have conflicts between Dalaran and Gilneas. At this time, however, there was no alliance. The kingdoms were rivals ever since the Arathi Empire split apart, and it was only the common threat of the Horde that brought them together. Here, without the Horde, without the formation of the alliance, that never happens. The human kingdoms come to blows at last, and in a few years we see a massive war erupt between the more hardcore human supremacist kingdoms such as Ultrak, Gilneas, and Stormguard, and the kingdoms that grew more on their openness for other ideas. Lordaeron, which benefited greatly from elven magic, Dalaran, which accepted mages of all races, to a degree, Kultiras, which grew more tolerant through trade and exchange of ideas, and an alliance with Lordaeron through Arthas's marriage to Jaina Proudmoore. The elves and dwarves try not to involve themselves in this conflict too openly, but tacitly some dwarves lend their industrial support to Gilneas and Ultrak, while elves prefer Lordaeron and Dalaran stay in power. Stormwind stays out of this conflict, at least for a long time, because it has its own problems. Medivh continues to grow in power, and his body continues to weaken from the toil of the cosmic power of Sargeras takes on him. His plans needed time to develop, and the Magna's withering body would not give him the opportunity to enact them. So he had to find a new host, who could perhaps last him a few decades more. And as war started to rage up north over Renaud Mograin's spurious claim to be a king of Stratholme, Medivh laid his eyes on a promising young vessel, the child of King Varian Rin, Anduin. Medivh takes him as an apprentice, teaching him magic, secretly preparing him to be a better vessel for his power. And as years pass, Anduin becomes quite the adept mage. With no real opposition and no one suspecting him, Medivh eventually passes away, taking care to do so in the presence of Anduin, and the new Magna is born. That wasn't all of Medivh's plans, of course, as he was planning to use the conflicts between the human kingdoms this whole time to advance something that came from Kil'jaeden. The idea of a scourge, a plague of undeath to ravage the world and prepare it for the Legion's coming. Thanks to Kil'jaeden's agents, Anduin Sargeras makes contact with a senior member of the Kirin Tor, Kel'thuzad. Together, they infect the supreme magus of Dalaran, Jaina Proudmoore, with a bespoke contagion meant to keep her alive, but weak and bedridden. And with a free reign in Dalaran, Kel'thuzad prepares his new plague, a plague that soon spreads across the warring kingdoms, decimating both sides. This is where you have to remember something from Wrath of the Lich King.
Without its master's command, the restless Scourge will become an even greater threat to this world. Control must be maintained. There must always be a Lich King.
Except in this world, there is no Lich King. The Scourge is feral, directionless, and all they know is kill, kill, and kill again. This is no army of the damned. This is dawn of the living dead, and the kingdoms are not ready for it. You could say they finally unite against a common threat as they did against the Horde, but by this point they are too weak to be effective even together. King Arthas fights valiantly on the front lines, but having never been trained to use the light, because the Paladin Order was never founded in response to the Horde invasion, he eventually falls. Anduin Sargeras is not completely successful, of course. Through their own investigation, Uther and Turalyon eventually find out what Kel'Thuzad has been doing, and through him, what happened to Anduin. After their own tough battle, they strike Anduin down, banishing the spirit of Sargeras, and leaving the Scourge almost completely leaderless. The Eastern Kingdoms appear entirely doomed, as the undead spread, with only satisfied Kil'jaeden to order them to sail west to Kalimdor. Ships full of the dead crash upon the shores of the Forgotten Continent and thrash through the land. The Night Elves make a valiant effort of defending it, but without the Horde or the Alliance to help them defend Mount Hyjal, they cannot hold it long enough. Archimonde climbs the world tree and consumes its power, thrusting Azeroth into eternal darkness, as the Burning Legion's long-devised schemes at long last come to fruition. So perhaps this time the Bronze Dragons were right, and opening the Dark Portal was absolutely necessary to eventually save Azeroth. But no, do you think some part of the events would have happened differently? Maybe you have another scenario you would like to see. No doubt there are some alternate timelines that could be stable, where the Burning Legion doesn't win, where the timeline doesn't collapse, and perhaps we can explore more of these scenarios in future videos. If you would like to see more, and if you have any other comments on things that you think would have gone differently, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed watching it, perhaps we will see more alternate timelines in the Infinite Azeroths.